Angry Bike Mechanic, guys. Welcome back. Today we need to talk about Magura brakes. Really quick, guys, I just want to ask for some help by asking for you to like these videos if you find them useful, and please subscribe. If you're watching this, please subscribe, and that really helps out. So as soon as we get to 1,000 subscribers, I'll be giving away a DPX2 damper repair. So if you've got that squishy sound, you need it. All right, let's dive into the Magura brake bleeds. All mechanics know this. They are a headache. They do not work well over time, and they generally break down, and typically the leak starts at the lever. The trouble with this is nobody wants to buy them. They just come spec'd on the high-end bikes because they're pretty light. The caliper is actually a really good caliper. The problem is in the brake lever. The brake lever is basically plastic, and they just develop leaks. They just go bad. There's no way to fix it. So let's take a look at what we need to do to service these regularly. And if they are holding pressure, then bleed them. And this will show you how to bleed it correctly according to the manufacturer's spec. And to be honest, if they're working correctly, yeah, they work great, but you do need to bleed them more often than you think. So what we need to do is prep the lever. And I like to bring it up so it's not quite flat on the bar in the work stand. That way there's a little bit of a tilt to it. So if there's air bubbles, it will come out the bleed port. Anyway, position that, and you're going to need a 25 millimeter Torx key. So this is my design. So I've got this fastened into place. I open up this. Be careful with these things. I mean, you don't have to be dainty, but those threads inside that lever body, can strip. Do not install the Magura bleed tool into that lever. Put so many problems with that. So you kind of just thread your syringe in there. Let's go back to the caliper now and prep that. I never bleed brakes with the pads in. You can't get the proper bleed if the volume is off. So I use a spacer. In this case, I'm going to use the SRAM spacer for the level brakes and then the elixirs. But to preserve my position, I want my left and right pads to go back in the left and right. I put the pin back through before I completely pull the pads out on all my brakes, no matter what I'm doing. Right now, I'm cleaning the caliper. I always clean the caliper. If I have a sticky caliper where the pistons are sticky and they're not retracting properly, I will lube them. Typically, they're Shimano or Magura, or a system designed around mineral oil. So I'll drip a little bit of that oil on those pistons, push them in and out, and then go back and re-clean and then prep for the bleed. So here's my my spacer. If you need to spread them a little bit more, I use the round end of a box end wrench to space those out, to press them back into place. Again, Torx 25 key to pull out the bleed plug. And as you open it, the fluid's just going to start running out. So it's nice to have a little paper towel underneath to catch that fluid. Now, this is an 8 millimeter wrench flat on the bleed fitting. So use that and make sure that you get it snug. All right, so let's look at bleeding now. I'm going to do this for the caliper up. Doing gravity bleeds does not work for me. Go back and pause that and read that. But anyway, what I like to do is withdraw some fluid into the syringe just to pull out any air that might be at the caliper. This is especially important if it feels like the brakes have some air in them, but typically you don't have to draw too much to find out if there's some air. And you can detach this from the bike in order to withdraw more air from the caliper by rotating it as you push and pull fluid through. You may need to do this more than once, by the way, to get a full refresh on fluid. This just shows you this step, so repeat as necessary. But I like to make sure I push the fluid through slowly so that I have control over what's happening. When you're done, detach and thread that thing back in. I like to use a driver style Torx 25. It allows me to spin things a lot quicker, so threading that bolt in, that bleed plug back in, is a lot quicker. Another tip is doing this first. Make sure you do this first, because then the gravity will push the fluid with its bubbles out as you screw that plug in order to prevent air buildup as that's open as you put that whole assembly back together. Then I go up to the bar. work out any bubbles that might be in the master cylinder and in the reservoir up there at the lever. And then remove your syringe quickly so you don't make a huge mess. It's going to make a mess anyway, but you don't try to minimize that. And then be careful threading your plug in at the top. These are plastic, the body's plastic, and you can strip them really easy. So be very careful, don't over torque it. If that starts to leak, you're into it a new lever. Now, reposition things and you're set. The brake should have pressure. And if you started off with a bad brake that was leaking, or if you started off with low pressure, you might be looking at a new system anyway. So readjust, and if you need to, bleed it again and take that caliper off and move it around if you have to during the bleed. So when you close the lever up with that bleed plug, make sure you depress the lever to get the proper amount of volume as you screw that bleed plug back in. All right, thank you guys for joining me, and we'll catch you next time.